He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast Vue with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi a better place to live, work, and play. And daily now, we're talking to men and women who are on the front lines, leading us through the process to get on the other side of this mess. Today, we've got two great guests. We've got Anthony Wilson from Mississippi Power Company, and then Robert St. John's, a restaurateur from Hattiesburg who loves coastal Mississippi and also serves as a member of the Restart Commission. Anthony, it's great to have you today. Appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, it's good to be back with you, Ricky.
I know you've got your hands full. You're the current chairman of the Gulf Coast Business Council. As you were telling me during the break, you were incoming president or chairman for the Mississippi Economic Council, but you've sort of delayed that while we're in this kind of no man's land. And then, of course, you're the president of Mississippi Power Company, and man, you've got your hands full. We talked yesterday about the tornado that came through southeast Mississippi, the widest tornado, 2.25 miles wide in the history of the state, and the third largest tornado ever measured in the entire United States. That's unbelievable that happened just 2 weekends ago.
It is unbelievable, and as a matter of fact, that tornado tracked through our service territory almost in its entirety. So we were fortunate in that it was not in a very, it was not one of the highly populated areas of our state, although we did unfortunately have, a lot of loss of life. And it was a difficult storm to deal with. And it hit a lot of our transmission infrastructure, the big lines that go cross country. And then, of course, we had several of our smaller towns, So in particular. I know you've seen pictures of that throughout the news. It was devastated, Ricky. That little town was it was almost completely flattened. And those folks are some of the most resilient people you'll ever meet. But it really took out all their infrastructure, including our infrastructure. We had to go in and completely rebuild our system there. It was quite an effort. And, what's interesting, you touched on this, we deal with storms. That's kind of what we do. But this is the first major storm that we had to deal with where we were following all of the COVID-19 protocols. So our crews were trying to operate with the proper social distancing. They were wearing masks. They were really concentrating on keeping their hands clean. It was very different. The staging areas where we would bring in our crews, we would usually use in a situation like that one big location. We broke it down to fewer, smaller locations. It was very different. But I have to take this opportunity to say thanks to our guys and gals that were out there on the ground making that happen, because they overcame all of that and got the lights back on in a hurry. So they really did a great job.
I had a wonderful conversation yesterday with Johnny Polis from the Mississippi Highway Patrol, and he said the thing that was hard for him to see and watch was that so many people wanted to go to So and these other communities to help, but they were turned away because all these COVID processes were in place, and it just was the way it needed to be. But Mississippians, good Lord, even after Katrina, we saw this where people turned away help so they could point the help in the direction they needed it to be. It's incredible to see this weird place that we are as a community having to do like disaster relief in the midst of a COVID disaster at the same time. That's one of the strangest things I've ever experienced in my life, to see this.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's unique. Let's hope and pray that it's a once in a lifetime thing and we don't see this again. This past Sunday, to your point, we had another outbreak of tornadoes that came through the Pine Belt again, and this time we were practiced. We did it the week before. And
how much damage did we get?
We had. Again, the transmission system was really hit hard. we had probably 7,000 customers impacted. Uh, it was not as widespread damage. We did not take a direct hit on a like a little downtown area. Uh, but it was a difficult storm. It was another violent storm. But we dealt with the COVID. We dealt with the COVID protocols again, and we knew that we could do it. And the restoration went pretty quickly.
So tell me about this, Anthony. You've alluded to it, but aside from the tornadoes outbreak, the reality was that your team was already identified, obviously, as essential workers, and that people are hunkered down at their houses. I'm sure that their energy use is up significantly, which increases the burden on people to have to constantly deal with the customer service issues that might come up. Just like a first responder, your team has to be ready to go. So tell me about the daily operating procedure of the power company.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, and I would tell you that the team put together a very I would call it a global plan that really has worked well. We have about 50-60% of our folks on what we would say at home duty. They're working, they're telecommuting, they're running the business of the company every day, and that's worked well. And that's all about your IT equipment, and can you keep it working and functioning like you need it to? And we have the remaining half of the company has continued to work. It's our line crews, it's our call center folks, it's our people in our control rooms and our power plants. Uh, they've got to continue to make electrons, Ricky,
Yeah.
and they're doing that, and we're getting it delivered out to customers. And when the weather is good and the power is on, it's a lot easier. And once we have a big event like we've had the last 2 weekends, it gets much more difficult. But they've stood the test, and I couldn't be more proud of them.
I had a good conversation with Ron Barnes last week from Coast Electric, and one of the things he did is it literally went through a list reminding people how to be energy efficient, because now that everyone's at home, this would be easy for them to drop their guard, and some of them may have some economic struggles that they're facing. So, any advice to people who are at their homes and maybe using a little bit more electricity than they normally would be using, and how to be efficient about this?
I think it's just be smart about what you're doing. If it's getting hotter out there, so folks are naturally going to want to crank their air conditioning units a little bit cooler. Those are the little things that just a degree here and a degree there can make a difference. So if you can keep your thermostat, around 78, I know that feels warm to people sometimes. But that really helps,
Yeah.
particularly when you're in your home 24/7 these days. So if you crank it down 3 or 4 degrees and you leave it there for that entire duration of basically every hour of every day of every of the week, that adds up. So be diligent about that. And it's the stuff folks know to do. We just have to be disciplined to do it.
So, Anthony, we're going to talk about the Restart Commission that you're a member of, and we're thrilled to have you on that group with the governor in the second half. But one of the things I wanted to just talk about for a second, I had Tish Williams from Hancock County and Adele Lyons and Paige Roberts from Jackson County Chamber, had Ashley and Adele both on the show on Friday, and we just sort of had a roundtable about what's going on. Had Roger Wilder from the Community Foundation and others. One of the things that impresses me is, and I've said it so many times before, that resiliency is definitely in our DNA. But we just have a group of leaders on this coast that understand what it's like to take the bull by the horn and begin to understand the current situation so that we can figure out specifically what do we need to do as we go forward. They're not sitting back waiting for the Restart Commission to come back with their recommendations. They're assessing the situation now so that when we get more clear directions on how to work our way through the various phases. They're just focused. I mean, we're really lucky to have the group of leaders we have on this coast, aren't we?
I totally agree with that. It's so many folks on this coast. I guess we could say, are tested. They've been through some difficult, very difficult economic situations. You go all the way back to Katrina, which you were so heavily involved in, and you come forward. We had the recession, we had BP, and then of course we had the issues last year with the spillway, and we transitioned now straight into COVID-19. Folks know that. Hey, if we don't start and start moving the ball ourselves, that no good can come from sitting idle.
No, we don't. I mean, the truth is, usually, if it's a hurricane, we've got people from all over the country, maybe even the world, coming to help us. But in this case, we're all facing the same situation around the world simultaneously. So we're at least we are prepared. We understand what it's like to sort of help ourselves and to build a plan to help ourselves. So why don't we do this? When we come back from the break, Anthony, we will continue the conversation about where do we go from here. And so anyway, this is Anthony Wilson, the president and CEO of Mississippi Power Company, who's a consummate community leader, and we'll be back after this break.
You can also listen live to SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on your Amazon Alexa devices. Once you've enabled the skill, just say, "Alexa, open SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast."
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Anthony Wilson here, the president and CEO of Mississippi Power Company, and someone who's an incredibly important leader, not only to coastal Mississippi, but to our state. Before we went to break, we talked about the power company's response to the recent tornado outbreak. And it's just inspiring to see that they're essentially first responders out there helping rebuild infrastructure and do the things that are necessary to help people get back where, so they can have power again and start their recovery process. And we talked about the volunteer and other leaders along the coast who are working together to get their arms around this situation. And before we move on to the Restart Commission that Anthony is a part of, I wanted to talk just for a second about, Anthony, I've had conversations with mayors along the coast, with police chiefs, the first responders. I've been really impressed with the way the public sector, especially elected officials, have come forward and begun to embrace the situation and help us, help keep people calm, to help communicate properly what they need to do to protect themselves and their family. And then the first responders, man, the work that they're doing is just so inspiring. What do you have to say about that before we move to the Restart Commission?
My observation's the same as yours, Ricky. That I think the mayors have really pulled together. I know that they talk multiple times as a group each week to make sure that what they're doing for their cities, if it makes sense in Pascagoula, then it might make sense in Bay St. Louis, and they're working really well together to, I think, use best practice and make good things happen for the Gulf Coast. I'm really, really pleased and excited to see all that's going on in terms of their hard work to make good things happen during this most difficult time.
You and I. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
The same is true, I think, with the boards of supervisors across the coast as well. I deal with just about all of them at one time or another, and they're really working hard, I think, to pull together with the municipalities and with the other boards across the coast to do good things. And I can't move beyond this segment without saying, the firemen and the police and the highway patrol that you mentioned earlier, we couldn't do what we do without them. I mean, people don't realize how closely we work with the fire departments and the police departments. Those folks are out there every day on the front line. And, our coast is so fortunate to have the folks in our first responder groups that we have. I mean, they're outstanding.
Yeah, it's great to see. It's great to see the coordination among the cities and the counties, because this is just in the interest of one coast and thinking of coastal Mississippi as a region, that this is a common enemy that we're facing. And so, there may be great ideas, as you pointed out, in Pascagoula that can be used over in Fay St. Louis. And the fact that they're sharing these ideas and helping develop sort of a common approach, if not, there may be some unique situations in each of the cities, but it is a common situation. It's a common language that we can use to describe the situation, and a lot of the responses are similar. So we're stronger. We're so much stronger when we think as a region. There's no doubt about that. So anyway, let's switch gears. You have been asked to be a member of the Restart Commission. You've already begun your meetings. Talk to us about why that's important. And I also should point out, before we get too far into that, is that we're in this strange place, Anthony. There's I call it the extended response period. There's not a moment when someone's going to wave a white flag without a vaccine to this virus that everybody's can just go about their business. We've got to figure out how to operate in this no man's land. And it's so important that the plateau that the governor talks about, that we begin to have that fall. That's the number of new cases reported each day. Because without that, we can't begin to proceed through the phases that you guys are going to be thinking about. So let's talk about all the elements of the Restart Commission.
Yeah. Well, you're right in that we get new information every day. It's a new piece of information that we need to figure out what is the significance of it, and how do we meld it into the plans that we're developing. It's really unprecedented, the amount of change that the I guess the state is having to deal with, the municipalities are having to deal with. They're learning something new every day, and they're having to work through that. And so that's kind of the backdrop of this thing. Is it came from nowhere, and then the unknown aspects of it continued from day to day to day to day. We're all waiting for this plateau. I think we're very near the plateau in our state in a lot of ways, and certainly in some parts of the state, I think we certainly are plateaued. So every piece of the state is a little bit different, depending on density of population and what have you. So it's a very unique time that we're in, and the governor knows that we've got to get the economy moving forward. I mean, I think you see that across the country, and certainly Mississippi's no different. Governor Reeves has had the insight to say, okay, we got to pull a group together to begin to help us think through what we're doing, and we had our first meeting last week, and I think it's the right group of people, and we're really beginning to think through how do we advance this ball. And I told someone earlier, it's really a two-part thing going on here. It's a when question. When can we do this? And I think that's going to be solely driven by the medical experts that we have in the state, and that the governor has working closely with him. And then the next question, which I think is what our commission is working on, is what do we do, and what are the steps that we can take, large and small, to move us forward. And clearly the governor wants us to think really in three phases. Really, right now, immediate, 30 to 90 days is the first part. And then we move into a more intermediate, where it needs from 90 days to 3 years. Then the long term is out further than that. So that's the charge. And the question is, what do we need to do right now to help begin to get momentum back into the economy?
So are there low hanging fruits that you guys have already begun to identify and think about picking?
Well, there's a lot of things that we're talking about. We've only had our first meeting, and I think a lot of ideas are coming up through that. It's kind of percolating through the top. That's one of the charges that we've all been given, is to be thinking about within the next few days, what immediate first steps can we take? Then we share those with the governor. He'll obviously he's very anxious to see what those steps could be, and then that'll out to the public thereafter.
Yeah, I think, it's so, I think people have to realize that these, I just want to amplify the point you made a few minutes ago, and that is that the data from the medical experts, the number of cases, the number of hospitalized, the number of, what all the numbers that they're looking at are going to drive this. And the thing that enables us to move faster through the phases is that we continue to see a decline. So that is the decline in the number of daily reported new cases of COVID. So essentially what's got to happen is if people really want our economy to come back and begin to thrive within the new normal, that they've all got to continue to do their part to make sure we don't pass this disease from one person to the next. We've got to be constantly focused on that. There's not a moment where we're going to arrive and everything's going to be okay without a vaccine. So we just got to figure out how to work through that. So the call to action for anyone listening or watching this video is continue to do your part. Continue to protect yourself and your family. That's probably the most important thing you could do right now if you really want small businesses and others to open up quickly. Isn't that right, Anthony?
Absolutely, that's right. I mean, we have to do our part, and it's washing your hands, it's using hand sanitizer, it's keeping distance from folks when you do have to go out to a grocery store. Use a mask if you have a mask. It's the things that I think we all know to do, but we really have to be disciplined about doing it. Mm-hmm. And if we can get to that point and everybody's doing that, then I think you begin to see a plateau and in the beginning of the decline. And I think the hot weather of the summer will help in that regard too. At least that's what I read. And once we get to that, then we can begin to open our economy back up. And it's a tough environment right now. We need the economy to move.
Well, you're right. I mean, the reality of our situation is we face a health disaster and an economic disaster, and we have to figure out a way to supercharge the economy as quickly as possible. We just can't continue the way that we are. And I've written about it. I've talked about it continuously. We have to be smart about it, but we have to create ways for businesses to be able to open. We're doing it now in very significant ways when you think about it. Grocery stores and Home Depot and auto repair shops. There's a large number of essentially essential businesses that have been identified. And then, of course, Friday, we began to open it up for more types of businesses, not essential businesses, to begin to open up. But we got to continue to move that forward. Every single business that can open now with the ability to socially distance and practice some of these safe procedures, they've got to get open, and we've got to figure out a path forward for them to do that. And then once we see the decline, we can move through the phases and begin to open up just a little bit more and slowly but surely put some new life back into this dead economy right now. I can't say how important that is. And it's good to see that we got some of the best minds in the state wrapped around that now.
Well, I think the folks that the governor has asked to participate in this are the right folks. They're representative of the entire geography of the state, which is important. It's representative of the different businesses that we have. I know you have coming up after me. Robert's going to be on, and he has businesses from Hattiesburg to the coast and around, and not only that, he has businesses outside of the restaurant business, and he'll be a great voice to give a different perspective.
Yeah.
And they all have to come together to kind of build a narrative that works for our state.
Well, Anthony, we're at the end of our time now, but I appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and we'll be back to you in a couple of weeks just to get a check-in. How about that?
Sounds good, Ricky. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for your leadership, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay. Robert St. John next.
Subscribe for free to the Coast Vue podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.